off this countdown, we have the witching hour. So legends about the witching hour aren't that new, but this particular one that I'm about to share with you is. For those of you who don't know, the witching hour is from 3 a.m. to 4 a.m. Apparently during this time, the realm between the spiritual world and our world becomes thin, making it easier for ghosts and spirits and demons to cross over. And I'm pretty sure you've seen people posting those 3 a.m. challenges where they wake up at 3 a.m. and then try to contact spirits. But there's a new legend surrounding this. Legend goes that if you naturally wake up at 3 a.m., it's because a spirit is present in your room and has woken you up. It is then said if you are woken up that whatever you do not stare into a dark mirror. Apparently if you do so, then the spirit will possess you and then basically you'll trade spots. So the spirit can control your body and your soul gets trapped into the spirit world. So I guess I'm removing all the mirrors from my room now. In our ninth spot, we have the chain letters. So chain letters are old news. They've been terrorizing people for decades. Usually people receive an email or social media message or even a text message with one. But now there's a new form of a chain letter that's been going around. So since everyone has to stay at home, children are now doing their schooling online. Well, a chainmail is being circulated over a chat platform that is being used for their online school. The chainmail talks about a 17-year-old kid named Carmen Winstead. It says that she died after a group of girls pushed her down a sewer hole trying to embarrass her. She was found with her neck broken and her face torn off. You then have to send this message to 15 people or else Carmen will get you. The message goes on to say that a kid named David ignored the message and was found dead the next morning. There was a message on his wall written in blood that said, "You will never have him back." Okay, that's pretty creepy if you ask me. In our eighth spot, we have the mirrors. So a couple of years ago, I heard this urban legend about mirrors. Basically, it says how you're never supposed to have two mirrors facing each other in a dark place. Apparently, it creates like a portal for spirits to get into our world. But now, there's a new version of this legend. Apparently, not only spirits can get into our world, but it's said that you should never stand in the middle between these two facing mirrors. Apparently, people have done this and have claimed that they felt like someone has grabbed them. Others claim that they were dragged back and slammed into the mirror, causing it to shatter. In our seventh spot, we have the Grey Lady of Westwick. Apparently, in the township of Westwick in England, there's a legend surrounding a Grey Lady. It is said that if you drive down the forest road after midnight, then you may encounter her. She's described as an old witch that can change her appearance. If you see her in her witch form, then she's described as an old lady with yellow rotting teeth and she wears all gray. Others claim that she's a vampire and not a witch. One thing that's for sure is that she seeks vengeance on men that have wronged women. So she can shapeshift into attractive women to try and lure men. Once you're trapped by her, she will kill you and then feast on you. Making our way down the list at number 6, we have the Zoom calls. So with everyone staying at home, one way people are staying connected is by video calls. Typically, people are using this website called Zoom. In fact, they have had a huge influx of people using their services. But now there's an urban legend going around about cyber spies that are hacking into your Zoom calls and stealing your information. Although Zoom claims to be secure, people still believe that these hackers are stealing your data and then selling it to other parties. Especially now since companies are doing all their meetings online. They could be releasing very valuable information. Other people claim that it's the government that's collecting the information. As a result of this legend, people have been warned that you should not talk about sensitive information over Zoom. Instead, just keep it strictly to friendly banter. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the Union Cemetery. Union Cemetery is located in Easton, Connecticut. It is said to be one of the most haunted cemeteries in the United States. Apparently, a ghost that they refer to as the White Lady haunts this cemetery. In fact, even Ed and Lorraine Warren have said to have seen this ghost and even have video footage of it. Like, I really want to see that. Anyways, the legend of the White Lady is not a new one, but apparently there have been recent sightings of a new ghost that lurks this cemetery. This one is of a mother that passed away shortly after delivering her baby. Legend goes that if you visit the cemetery at night, you can see the shadow of the woman roaming around, trying to find her baby. Moving on to number 4, we have the Moore Park Ravine. Here in Toronto, there's a ravine known as Moore Park Ravine. Now, I've never been, but apparently it's haunted. So legend goes that it's haunted by a worker that was killed while doing maintenance of the trail. After a bad lightning storm, the ravine had a couple of fallen down trees blocking the trail. As a result, the man was moving the trees when another one unexpectedly fell and crushed him. It is then said that at dusk, you can see the shadow of this man lurking behind the trees. Others have felt a cold hand touching their arm as they walk the trail. Some even say that they have heard his cries for help. In our third spot, we have the Ghost of Lowe's. Yes, Lowe's, as in Lowe's, the store that sells a bunch of home improvement stuff. Apparently, there's a ghost at one of the locations. According to one of the overnight workers, he has experienced a lot of paranormal activity at his location, which he never disclosed, so we never know which location is haunted, so just be careful. Well, legend goes that late at night, a spirit roams the store and causes havoc for the workers. The ghost tampers with the motion sensor lights, sets off product alarms, and is even said to push and trip workers. One worker claims that aisle 13 is the aisle with the most paranormal activity. Others have claimed to have heard whispers, seen shadows, and have felt like they were being watched. I mean, out of all the places, why did they choose to haunt Lowe's? Like, come on, I'd pick Costco. They got everything there. In our second spot, we have the Blue Man. Legend goes that if you see this blue man, do not stop. Do not talk to him, for if you encounter him, then you will be controlled by him, and he will make you harm yourself and others. Story goes that one day a man was driving home when he saw this man standing at the side of the road. He was quite tall and was dressed in all blue. The man slowed down to see if he was okay or if he needed a ride home. When the blue man turned to face him, he saw that he had pure black eyes and a creepy wide grin. The man then drove off so fast, but when he got home, he wasn't the same. His eyes were now completely black, just like the blue man's. He ended up grabbing a hammer and hit his wife over the head multiple times. Then he ended up killing himself. So if you see a man dressed in all blue lurking at the side of an old highway, don't stop, don't make eye contact, just keep driving. And in our number 1 spot, we have the haunted Tinder profile. From 2019 to earlier this year, stories about a haunted Tinder profile have creeped out many of the app's users. Legend goes that a ghost of a boy named Dylan haunts the app. If you match with him, the consequences can be deadly. So according to legend, Dylan was considered a social outcast. One of the reasons being because he had a birthmark right below his left eye. He didn't have many friends and was often picked on at school. Now, Dylan was using Tinder for quite some time trying to find a girlfriend, but people at his school found his profile and then he was tormented even more. Eventually, it got so bad that he took his own life. But now it's said that his Tinder profile is still active. He is said to match with the girls that look just like his bullies.
Starting us off with number 10 is Cropsey. Kids growing up in Staten Island during the 80s had probably been told the story of Cropsey over and over again. Legend has it this boogeyman lived in the woods and would disembowel kids at night. Kids would go crying to their parents at night scared of the boogeyman, and they would assure them that don't worry kids, he's not real. But he was. Andre Rand was a weird man. He once randomly picked up 11 kids from a YMCA in a school bus, fed them, and then took them to an airport in New Jersey without any of their parents knowing. No one was hurt, but he still went to prison for 10 months for just being an absolute creep. Fast forward to 1981, 7-year-old Holly Ann Hughes fails to come home after going to the store with her friend. Andre pulled up to the duo and pulled Holly into his car and drove off, and eyewitnesses confirmed it. 1983, 11-year-old Thais Jackson goes missing. 1984, 20-year-old Hank Gaffario goes missing, and despite him being slightly old, he was described as not the smartest. Finally, in 83, Jennifer Schwager goes missing as well. Eyewitnesses saw her with Andre last before finding her body a month later. By 1988, Andre is charged with her kidnapping and murder, but only convicted with the former. Sentenced to 25 years in prison, he would have been free in 2008 had he not been convicted with kidnapping Holly as well. He'll finally be released in 2037 unless he of course dies of old age before that. So yes, the legend of Cropsey was real. It was Andre. Coming in at number 9 is satanic panic. Originating in the US during the 80s, people were shitting themselves over the possibility that satanic ritual abuse was happening and involved physical or sexual abuse of an individual for the greater good or evil of a satanic ritual. The publication of Michelle Smith's book Michelle Remembers details how she believes satanic rituals involved sacrificing children. The book gained a lot of media success, which led to a bunch of new mandatory reporting laws and child protection across the world. Then in 1983 came the McMartin preschool trial, which contained allegations of children being hurt in satanic ritual abuse at a daycare. Soon after, 100 other preschools across the country were investigated based on similar allegations. So moral panic of the devil was super heightened during the 80s, and I feel like people still fear the devil now. I mean, I say not today Satan almost every single day, so I'm pretty much protected, so joke's on you. Number 8, we have the Montauk Project. This was supposedly a series of classified US government experiments that took place at Camp Hero or Montauk Air Force Station. The reason behind the project was trying to find a way to develop psychological warfare techniques, experiment on children, open portals to other dimensions, and just dabble a little in time travel. Stories about the project have circulated since the 80s, and the main fuel came from Preston Nichols, who claimed to have uncovered repressed memories of his own involvement. He also claimed he is routinely abducted by the government against his will so they can do God knows what to him. Nichols came out with the Montauk Project series where he exposed what all goes on, including apparently the faking of the moon landings. Fun fact, TV show Stranger Things was actually inspired by the Montauk Project, so much so that Montauk was going to be the show's name. Can you imagine? It just doesn't have the same ring. Stranger Things. Montauk. It's just not. It's not. No. Filling at number 7 slot is Slave Master. Remember when you got chainmail or spam in your inbox like multiple times a day, and ironically it was always from your friends because the email said something like, oh, if you don't forward this to 10 of your contacts, your love life will be horrible for the next 10 years or some shit like that. I remember the days. But nowadays they are replaced by spam emails from companies' mailing lists that you don't even remember ever subscribing to. Literally during my lunch break I just go through my emails and unsubscribe because I'm like, dude, stop spamming me. Either way, around the year 2000 a lot of people got a scary chainmail warning them about an AIM user called Slave Master. He was meant to be a serial killer that lured women to his house after talking to them in these chat rooms. The chainmail varies in what the guy's username was. Sometimes it was Sweet Cali Guy Forever or Monkey Man 935. Serial killer and all-around crook John Edwards Robinson started his spree of murders in the 80s in Kansas City. His modus operandi involved trolling online BDSM communities, and do you know what his username was on those sites? Slave Master. 2 of his victims' bodies were found on his property in 2000, and he was finally convicted in 2002. Goodbye! I know there's a lot of talk about the 2000s in that one, but I mean he did start committing crime in the 80s, so it's technically an 80s urban legend. Ha! Now at number 6 is Stairway to Heaven. This popular song by Led Zeppelin was released towards the end of 1971, but it took until 1982 for it to gain a lot of attention, but for the wrong reasons. Television evangelist Paul Crouch announced on the Trinity Broadcasting Network that the song contained satanic lyrics if you played the song backwards. The message can be found during the line, "If there's a bustle in your hedgerow, don't be alarmed now." When played backwards, it's meant to say, "Here's to my sweet Satan, the one whose little path would make me sad, whose power is Satan. He'll give you 666. There's a little tool shed where he made us suffer. Sad Satan." Surely not all of that came from that little sentence that I said prior. Either way, the band itself has ignored these claims, and their record company even said, dude, our turntables only play in one direction, and that is forward. Regardless, this was a huge urban legend from the 80s because even I heard it nearly 20 years later when I was born. I still hear about it now and it's 2020. But, funnily enough, I've never actually heard the song. LOL. Coming in at number 9 is Buckling Up. I legit thought this was fake, but apparently it's 100% true. Up until 1984, no one was legally required to wear a seatbelt while they were in a car. The law in the States was that seatbelts had to be included in personal vehicles, but they weren't mandatory to wear. My parents constantly remind me to wear my seatbelt anytime I'm in a car. I feel like that's one of the first important life lessons you get taught, so I can't even imagine that there was a time you didn't do it and it was seen as completely fine. Not dangerous, just optional. Do you hear that? I'm atting my parents for that one. There was a time you were in a car without wearing a seatbelt. Although I don't advertise this at all. Always wear a seatbelt no matter what. Always. This has been a PSA. And number 4 is Michael Jackson. Okay, Thriller. This This one is low-key funny, but in the 80s and 90s there was this urban legend that had people believing that Michael Jackson was the same person as his sister LaToya Jackson. And honestly, I do get why people believed it. I know siblings looking similar is very common, but they looked uncannily identical. It was very creepy. There have been times where I've seen paparazzi pictures of LaToya wearing a hat and I thought it was Michael Jackson. I mean, that was obviously before his death. Now there's no mistaking it, and the legend is clearly false, but it spread so quickly that LaToya was actually asked about it in an interview back in 1988. She said, "I've always been a very big supporter of Michael's career. We've always been there for each other, but we are definitely not each other." Case closed. Filling at number 3 slot is Andy Kaufman. The famous actor-comedian was known for playing the character Foreign Man on the show Taxi in the late 70s, early 80s. Unfortunately, he died in 1984 at the age of 35 due to lung cancer. His death certificate says 1984, but Andy also routinely spoke of faking his own death as a massive hoax or prank, so people didn't know whether to believe he had actually died. There was also a rumor that Andy was gay and was one of the first people who died of AIDS, but that it was hidden from the public. In 2013, Andy's brother Michael was at a comedy club and got a letter that was apparently from Andy, and it said that he had had a daughter that was born in 1989. After his supposed death. After investigating the claim, Michael disclosed that it was fraud and that he is truly dead. He's apparently also been seen after his death multiple times, and I feel like faking your own death isn't uncommon. People think Elvis and Tupac did it too, so I mean. Now at number 2 is the real parentage. Unless you live under a rock, then you have probably heard of a little family called the Kardashians. The mega-rich group has overcome scandal after controversy, after 72-day marriages, and after not paying Bangladeshi workers for making their products. Kylie, you're a billionaire, pay your workers. Sorry, there was something stuck in my throat. I think it was called The Rich Exploiting the Poor. But one urban legend never seems to leave the family alone, and that's the true parentage of Khloe, who was born in 1984. In a 2009 episode of Keeping Up with the Kardashians, Khloe asks her mum Kris if she's adopted, and her mum says no. And I can see why she'd ask. Other than the big ass, all her features are slightly lighter and a bit different to her sisters. A maternity test proved Kris was telling the truth, but that doesn't mean people thought Robert Kardashian was the father. Now, if you're unaware, Robert was a lawyer and was friends with and represented O.J. Simpson while he was on trial for murdering his wife and supposed lover. People thought O.J. was Khloe's real dad, and Kris was like, absolutely not. I did cheat on Rob, but that was after Khloe was born and it wasn't with O.J. I'm not sure if that's meant to help her case, but it certainly doesn't make her look good. I'm not saying anything, I'm just saying look at pictures of O.J.'s daughter Sydney next to pictures of Khloe, and then make your own assumption, make your own conclusion. I'm not gonna say anything. And finally, at number 1 is Natalie Wood. The Golden Globe actress was in movies like Rebel Without a Cause, West Side Story, and more. Her personal life was quite complicated. She was married to actor Robert Wagner, then they got divorced, then she married producer and screenwriter Richard Gregson. They divorced 3 years later, and then she remarried Robert. Either way, what was even more complicated were the circumstances surrounding her death. In November of 1981, Wood was filming the movie Brainstorm and was having a relaxing weekend boat trip to Catalina Island. Here are the people that were present at the time. We have Robert, since it was his yacht, Brainstorm co-star Christopher Walken, and the yacht's captain Dennis Davin. At 8 AM on the 29th, authorities discovered Natalie's body a mile away from the boat. The first suspected cause of death was accidental drowning and hypothermia, but we don't really know how true that is. Firstly, the autopsy results indicated she had bruises all over her arms and body and an abrasion on her left cheek. Now, how do you get those injuries during drowning? The night before, Wood and Wagner had had a fight because Wood and Walken were getting flirty, and that made Wagner incredibly jealous. Apparently she had tried to board a dinghy to leave the yacht but slipped while in the process, which again doesn't make sense. She was terrified of water her whole life, she couldn't swim, and she was drunk. Witnesses heard a woman screaming for help that night, and Wagner wouldn't let Dennis turn on the searchlight. So what happened to Natalie Woods that night? We'll never know.
Starting off this countdown, we have the Cabbage Patch dolls. Those creepy little baby powder smelling dolls have a bunch of urban legends of their own, but one that really scared children in the 90s was this one. So legend goes that Cabbage Patch dolls were designed to resemble what people would look like after a nuclear attack. According to this legend, back in the late 80s, President Reagan and the Cabbage Patch Dolls company decided to make the dolls intentionally odd looking. They did this because scientists believed that the dolls were what the offspring of survivors of a nuclear war would look like. These dolls were then a way for people to get accustomed to this look so that people weren't ostracized for their appearance. That's terrifying. I can never look at those dolls the same way again. Moving on to number 9, we have the kisses. Who here remembers kisses? Not the chocolate and not the, like the brightly colored beads. They were pretty popular in the late 80s to early 90s, especially in the Philippines. Now, in the Philippines, there was a legend that you could make these beads reproduce. Creepy, I know. Legend goes that if you put the beads in cotton and soak them in alcohol or water, then they would multiply and give birth to more kisses. In our 8th spot, we have the bridges. Here is another pretty popular urban legend from the Philippines. Legend states that bridges were made stronger if they use dead bodies in the construction. As a result, a lot of people believe that bodies were being cemented into the foundation of bridges. The legend continues by saying that bridge builders were collecting dead bodies for these bridges. And throughout the 90s, there were a lot of disappearances, which fueled this urban legend even more. Making our way down the list at number 7, we have Homie the Clown. Clowns are creepy enough on their own, so why do people have to go out and create terrifying urban legends about them? Well, in Chicago in the 90s, there was a legend going around of a creepy man stalking people trying to kidnap them. This man was dressed up as Homie the Clown from the TV show In Living Color. Some say he will try to lure you into his van with candy, while others believe that he was a serial killer or a maniac on the loose. A lot of people believe this legend to be true. However, there was no hard evidence proving it. Just a lot of supposed sightings. Moving on to number 6, we have the mind control. Disneyland is a magical place. You got fun rides, amazing sights, and cute mascot characters. But what if I told you that Disneyland was mind controlling its guests? That was a legend that was being spread all throughout the 90s into the 2000s. So apparently Disneyland is pumping out a certain fume throughout the park that makes you feel super happy. This scent basically triggers the release of endorphins in your brain, which is what makes everyone love Disney and keeps them coming back. Now, this is somewhat true. Disneyland has a device known as the Smeltzer, which can control what you smell. This device that is disguised by looking like a speaker is a scent generator that makes sure you smell exactly what they want you to smell. In the main entrance, it's said that you will smell popcorn. At the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, it will smell like wet wood and sea salt. And in candy shops or ice cream parlors, you will smell vanilla. Very sneaky, Disney. Very sneaky. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the sacrifice. Here is another popular urban legend from the Philippines. In the 90s, it was well believed that if you left your slippers outside of your house at night, then a cult member would kill you. Sounds ridiculous, but this legend made kids paranoid. Now, there are a bunch of different versions of this legend, but the general idea is that if you leave your flip-flops, sandals, shoes, or any footwear outside your door, a cult member will kill you. Apparently, those members do some weird chant over the footwear, like a spell, which will make the owner open the door to their house and let them in. When inside, you will suffer a very unfortunate fate. Other versions say that they will behead the owner and then bring the head with them. Whereas some believe that these individuals are Satanists and they do this as a sacrifice for the devil. Either way, this is a pretty creepy legend. Coming in at number 4, we have the 100 Steps Cemetery. The 100 Steps Cemetery is located in Indiana and is said to be very deadly. Now, no one really knows when or how this legend began, but it became pretty popular in the 90s. So legend goes that if you are in this cemetery at midnight, then you must climb the steps and count to 100. When you reach the top, you will be greeted by the ghost of an undertaker. This ghost will give you the vision of your death. On the way back down, you're supposed to count the steps again. If you count the same number of steps on the way down, then the vision is real and that's how you're gonna die. Whereas if you count a different number on the way down, then the vision is false. People that try to outsmart the cemetery by, let's say, climbing to the top of the hill without using the stairs will be severely punished. There are reports of people being knocked out or shoved by an unseen force. Some people have even had a large red handprint remain on their back for days. That is said to be the mark of the devil. Moving on at number 3, we have tap tap tap. This is a pretty popular urban legend that probably dates back before the 90s, but was very popular throughout the 90s. So according to this legend, a couple head out to the woods in their car to have a little fun time. However, while in the woods, their car won't start. So the boyfriend leaves to go look for some help. The girl remains in the car with the doors locked, waiting for her boyfriend to return. After hours, she begins to worry. She's alone in the dark in the car and she keeps hearing this tapping noise. For hours, something was going tap 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 on her roof. Eventually, she falls asleep and in the morning, she is greeted by the sheriff. He escorts her out of the car and that's when she sees her boyfriend hanging from a tree over the car, dead. The tapping noise she heard all night? That was the sound of his feet hitting the roof of the car below. Okay, that one is pretty terrifying. In our second spot, we have the black-eyed children. This legend is definitely one to keep you up at night. I've talked about it on this channel before, but for those of you who don't know, this legend is about evil children whose eyes are completely black. The kids can be anywhere from 6 to 16 years old and target adults who are alone, but they aren't actually children. Although they look like them, they are said to be some sort of creature that takes form as a child. These kids often ask for favors, such as asking to get a ride home with them, asking for food, or to use the bathroom in their house. But it's said that once you let them in, they will commit acts of extreme violence. Now, there are too many stories about people encountering these children. 1998 was said to be the first encounter. A man claims that 2 black-eyed children tried to get a drive home from him. That report is what caused the legend of the black-eyed children to become popular in the late 90s. And in our number 1 spot, we have the Chupacabra. The Chupacabra is a legend about a creature that likes to attack animals and consume their blood. Chupacabras were first reported in 1995 in Puerto Rico, where they were blamed for attacks on goats, sheep, and other domestic animals. These animals were found uneaten, but just drained of blood, as if they were attacked by a vampire. The monster is said to be able to stand upright and resembles a large reptilian kangaroo with huge red eyes. Other people have said that the monster looks like a canine in appearance, but is hairless. Now, there are also sightings of the Chupacabra around the southwest as well, but people all over the world have now said that they have also found their livestock dead, with 2 puncture wounds and being drained of blood. So, watch out, because this creature may actually be real. Starting off this countdown, we have the blue star. In the early 90s, a hoax was being spread around by concerned parents. The legend was that drug dealers were giving kids temporary tattoos that were laced with LSD. Apparently, these tattoos would come in shapes of blue stars or popular characters like Mickey Mouse. In fact, this legend was so popular that in some schools, temporary tattoos were banned. Moving on at number 9, we have the Halloween candy. Man, I used to love Halloween. Yeah, actually, no, I still love Halloween. I miss trick-or-treating. Those days were the best, like going door to door and getting a bag full of free candy. What else could we ask for? But in the 90s, parents were very concerned about the candy their kids were receiving. Legend goes that people were sticking razor blades inside of candy apples, needles were being pushed inside of candy bars, and people were even injecting poison into the candy. The legend continues with it always being about a sick man that wanted to kill for fun. As a result, it was advised for parents to always check their child's candy before they eat it. Even nowadays, this legend is super popular. Every Halloween, it is still advised to thoroughly check your child's candy before letting them indulge. Coming in at number 8, we have I Am Cold. This legend surrounds a teen who one day stumbled upon some robbers stashing gold in the pipes of their home. The boy was so scared that he ran away and hid in a woodshed on a farm. Later on, he was found curled up, frozen to death. His ghost then terrorized the property, saying, "I'm cold," in an eerie voice. He haunts the ground looking for a jacket to keep him warm. Apparently, if you do give him a jacket, then he will transform to a normal, healthy-looking boy and then vanish. If not, he will continue to haunt you. Coming in at number 7, we have the footprints. So, it was a very snowy night and a young girl was staying up late watching her favorite TV show. As it got later, she noticed a man outside of her window. The man was very scary looking and he was holding a big knife. Terrified of the man, she hid underneath the covers and called the cops. The cops came by and inspected the area, however, found no footprints in the snow outside of the window that the girl saw this man. But what they did find was a trail of wet footprints inside her house, leading up to the couch where the girl was sitting. Therefore, the man was standing right behind her the whole time, and she just saw his reflection. In our sixth spot, we have killer claws. Happy holidays, everyone! Although it's the middle of the summer here in Canada, let's pretend that it's December and, around Christmas time for this next legend. So this legend surrounds a woman who, on Christmas Eve, killed her husband. While disposing of his body down a well, an emergency warning was released telling everyone to stay inside because a patient escaped from an asylum and is on the loose, killing people while dressed up as Santa. The killer ends up coming to this woman's home and tries to kill her with an axe. The woman tries to outsmart him and the police by basically saying that the killer Santa was the one that killed her husband and she was innocent. But her plan fell through when her daughter ended up letting the killer inside the house. She ends up saying, "Look, Mom, Santa is here." Then sadly, the woman gets axed to death. We're now at our fifth and halfway mark with Locked In. This next legend surrounds a girl that couldn't speak. As a result, she was constantly bullied by her classmates. One day, her mom found out that her husband, who was overseas, was sick. As a result, she sent her daughter to her grandmother's house while she went to go look after her husband. However, while on her way to her grandmother's house, her classmates started picking on her and chased her all the way back to her house. They then locked her inside of her room, and she ended up dying of starvation. She is now said to haunt the grounds as a ghost. Making our way down the list at number 4, we have the corrupt executioner. So this next legend surrounds an executioner that loved killing criminals. Whenever someone was sentenced to the death penalty, he would be happy that he was the one pulling the lever of the electric chair. However, one day the government ruled that the death penalty was unethical. So the man was out of work and many criminals got to continue living. But he didn't like this, so he went around killing off these criminals. Eventually, the corrupt executioner was caught just when the death penalty was reinstated. So it was a pretty shocking end to this legend, if you catch my drift. In our first spot, we have the vain woman. Once there was a young, beautiful woman. All she cared about was her beauty and getting rich. As a result, she would often steal other people's jewelry and then pawn it off to get the money. While at the pawn shop one day, the owner offered her an undeniably great deal. He said that he would give her $10,000 if she would just let him take a mold of her face, since she was just so beautiful. So she agreed, thinking that this dude was just some weirdo with a fetish, and so she took the money and went on to live a very luxurious life. Now, the man did say that she would have 4 months to reverse the deal. Well, the day after the 4 months were done, the girl started to become less beautiful. By the hours, her skin grew wrinklier and wrinklier. She was aging rapidly. Turns out that the man ended up stealing her beauty and gave it to his dead wife to revive her. He does this every so often to keep his wife alive. Not a very profitable deal if you ask me. In our second spot, we have drip, drip, drip. Alright, for this legend, it surrounds a teen who was afraid of the dark. But she had a cute little dog that would sleep under her bed and keep her company. First off, if you have a dog, when you want it on your bed to cuddle with, not underneath your bed, come on. Whenever she would feel afraid in the middle of the night, she would just put her hand under the bed and her dog would lick it, and that would reassure her. But one night she heard something go drip, drip, drip. Being scared, she put her hand under the bed and felt reassured when she felt her dog licking her hand. However, the dripping didn't stop, so she got up and checked the bathroom. She checked the taps, nothing. But she still heard drip, drip, drip. She checked under the sink, but there was nothing. She still heard that dripping noise. Lastly, she checked the shower, and behind the curtain she found her dog dead in the shower, his blood dripping down from the shower head. There was then a message written in blood saying, "People lick too." Honestly, this is probably the main reason that when I go to the bathroom, I rip open the shower curtain to make sure no one's there. Man, this legend made me paranoid. And in our number 1 spot, we have Lights Out. So this next urban legend is a bit different than the rest. This legend was actually spread via a fax machine in the 1990s to the early 2000s. This legend started off as a fake warning from police. Then it kept being faxed around and stayed in circulation for years. So this is the legend about the flashing headlights. Basically, legend goes that part of a gang's initiation process involves one of the members driving around with their headlights off. Then they would kill the first person who flashes their headlights at them. So people were warning others to never flash their headlights at cars driving without them on. Starting off this countdown, we have the game. So legend states that the whole world is just in a game, and we're being controlled by players. I know, it sounds crazy. So the legend states that we really don't have control over what's happening in our lives and in the world right now. Each month we enter a new level of this game. The first level was the virus. The second level was the murder hornets. Now we are just sitting ducks waiting for what's next to come. I'm thinking a massive natural disaster or meteor strike. Moving on at number 9, we have the end of the world. So remember that huge scare that we had back in 2012 when people thought that that was going to be the end of the world? Well, this next legend states that we aren't going to make it to 2021, and that 2020 is the end of the world. Basically, people discovered that in the Ethiopian calendar, 2020 is actually 2012, meaning that if they were right and the world was going to end in 2012, then hello, it currently is 2012 and we're gonna die. In our 8th spot, we have nature's revenge. So this next legend states that Mother Nature is seeking revenge on all of us. After years of polluting and killing the earth, Mother Nature is finally taking a stand. So the earth naturally stirred up this virus to give itself a break. We were at the stage of damaging it to the point of no return. So basically, the virus is not only depopulating the world, but it's forcing people to stay at home, meaning less cars on the street polluting the air, less people littering, and less factories up and running. In our 7th spot, we have the sting. Due to our current situation, everything is now being done online. People are working from home, doing meetings on web calls, and of course, schooling is now all online. However, legend goes that the College Board was running a Reddit sting to catch AP test cheaters. Now, buckle up for this one. It's pretty wild. So back on May 10th, a couple of days before AP tests were supposed to begin around the world, a Reddit user named Dinosauce313 came out of nowhere. They posted a subreddit titled AP Test 2020. They then said that this is basically a way for AP students to cheat on their exams. But users were not fooled. They thought that this was way too fishy. Not only was Dinosauce313 a new account, but the way that they spoke sounded like an adult trying to be a hip teen. Also, they noticed that the name Dinosauce appears in random username generators as one of the options. So now people are convinced that the College Board was trying to catch cheaters through Reddit. In fact, the College Board did announce that they, and I quote, may post content designed to confuse and deter those who attempt to cheat. One individual wanted to do some investigating of their own, so they messaged him saying that they wanted to join for their AP US history test. Dinosauce313 responded with a link that they could use, but the link was a Grabify link, meaning that if you clicked it, they would be able to see the account's IP information. So, what do you think? Seems to me like it might have been a failed attempt to catch cheaters. Making our way down the list, number 6, we have the coughing patient. With everything that's going on right now, some hospitals are being overwhelmed by patients, and others overwhelmed by ghosts of patients. Yeah, that's right. So, one hospital believes that they are haunted by the ghost or ghosts of patients that passed away from this virus. In one section of the hospital, overnight workers have heard sounds of someone coughing when no one is around them. In fact, some nurses claim to have heard the sounds of someone breathing with a ventilator. When they investigate, no one is ever where the sound originates from. This one is pretty creepy, but also kind of sad. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the Wandering Man. Wisconsin is filled with urban legends. In fact, I did a video entirely dedicated to that, so if you're interested, then check that video out as well.
Fun fact, it's the very first video I ever did on this channel. Okay, well, this urban legend surrounds a lonely old man that is said to wander along the side of the roads. He is always seen with disheveled and patchy gray hair wearing a dirty hospital gown. The first time he was spotted, a witness called the cops thinking that this man was lost. When the police arrived at the scene, they tried to talk to him, but he would only pace back and forth. When he went to go radio for backup and an ambulance, the man disappeared without a trace. Now, over the past couple of months, there have been reports of people seeing this man just wandering the side of the highway and then vanishing into thin air when they pull over and try and help him. In our fourth spot, we have the disappearing patient. Seems like there's a reoccurring theme here with all these urban legends. So this next one is about a patient that disappeared completely from the back of an ambulance. So legend goes that an ambulance driver was reporting to a call. However, on the way to the location, they heard rustling and moaning coming from the back of the rig. One of the ambulance drivers called out to whatever was back there, and all they heard in return was a raspy, "Hello." It was probably much creepier than that, but that's like my impression of it. They pulled over to see what was going on back there, but when they opened up the doors, no one was there. However, the equipment was all set up as if someone had just been laying there with an oxygen mask on. Pretty creepy. They believe that their ambulance is haunted by a soul that passed away in the back of their vehicle. In our third spot, we have the aliens. 2020 might just be the year that we learn more about extraterrestrials. Back in April of 2020, the Pentagon released footage of what appears to be unidentified flying objects. The videos were recorded in 2004 and 2015. Legend goes that this is the government's way to formally acknowledge that there is extraterrestrial life. Okay, but why did they have to tell us in 2020, like, all we need is now an alien attack to happen? In videos, you can see what appears to be a UFO flying in the sky. One of the pilots that witnessed this phenomena and captured it on video told CNN that the disc moved in ways he couldn't explain. Apparently 1 second it was there, and then next thing you know, disappeared. So it might just be that aliens are real, and the government has been aware of this. But again, why in 2020 did they decide to reveal this information? Like, what do they really have under their sleeve? Moving on to number 2, we have 5G. I'm sure some of you have read up on all the crazy conspiracies surrounding 5G. So legend goes that 5G can cause cancer, is brainwashing us, and even cause the current pandemic. Yeah, that's right. So first off, they think that the 5G cell towers are so strong that they give out enough radiation that can cause cancer. Then they think that 5G is a tool that the government will use to make everyone fall into a docile state so that they can be more easily corrupted and manipulated. And lastly, it caused the virus outbreak. How? Well, legend goes that the 5G towers can spread the virus, or it can weaken your immune system so that you then get the virus. I mean, apparently Wuhan installed 5G towers right before the outbreak. Some even say that the towers are being put up at night so that no one notices them. It may just be all part of a grand scheme to depopulate the earth. And in our number 1 spot, we have the vaccine. So legend goes that the vaccine for COVID, when it's made, will really just be a way for the government to put chips in us. So when the cure is ready for us, we will each be implanted with a chip. This chip will allow the government to monitor our every move and watch over us. Some even think that it's a way for them to control us. Now, for the anti-vaxxers, they are at an even higher risk. Those who refuse to get the vaccine will be killed by the virus, aka the government will make sure that they die. Their main goal is to get everyone implanted with these chips. Honestly, I love chips, but not this kind.